welcome to another episode of Trans Confessions, a very queer journey. I am your host, Jynx. My co host, Daphne, will be joining us a little bit later. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got a lot of interesting topics that we want to discuss. But before we go into that, I definitely want to put this out there that viewer discretion is absolutely advised. We talk about very triggering subjects. I swear a lot. So, preferably nobody watching this under the age of 18, unless you like hearing a lot of swearing, in which case, well, I can't help it. So, thank you for joining us anyway. So, I want to go kind of right into it now that we've got all the legal mumbo jumbo and the disclaimers out of the way. I'm actually going to bring up the chat window on the side here just so that people can see the chats as they come in, when they come in. So now you guys can kind of see everyone who makes comments on the side. And again, viewer discretion is absolutely advised. People say some awful things when I'm live. Just ignore them. There's not much I can do about it. The moderators do their best to keep them off there, but, it is what it is. So, kind of going into the topics for today. So we're going to be talking about Russia and kind of what's going on in the Ukraine, but we also want to discuss why. What's the history of the Ukraine and the Ukrainian regions, Crimea specifically, the eastern regions of the Ukraine, there's part that's being contested. We are going to go into that. More importantly, though, as the title of our episode states, how this Russian conflict in the Ukraine is allowing U.S. congresspeople and lawmakers to essentially criminalize being transgendered, and which leads to the murder of transgender children. It's a tough subject. It's an absolutely tough subject. Towards the end of the video, I'll definitely be giving an update. This is my 11th month update for HRT. So kind of what I've been going through, what other people who will be doing the same can expect to see as we move forward. And then I'll even leave a little bit of time at the end for some open chat. So let's go ahead and dive right into the topics for today. Topic number 1, Russia, what the fuck? Anyone who has not been living under a rock, who's been watching the news, obviously knows what's going on overseas between Russia and Ukraine. I fully support Ukraine and their want to be independent and free from the Russian tyranny, from their oligarch. But what is the purpose of what Russia is doing? Why? Why is Russia doing what they're doing? Well, let's kind of understand the whole ins and outs of what's really, really going on over here. Ukraine has been a long time and important, yet somewhat overlooked role in our world's global security. So today when you look as that country is on the front lines of a renewed power rivalry between Russia and obviously the Ukrainian people, you're going to get a lot of talking heads, a lot of analysts, and a lot of people who work specifically in international relations are going to want to really break down what's going on here and why it's actually so important to everybody. Not just people in Russia, not just people in the Ukraine. So we know that in recent elections, Ukrainians have clearly indicated they see a future in Europe, not in Russia. The Ukrainian people have spoken as loudly as they possibly can and made it very, very clear to the global population that they see their future as being a large economic powerhouse as a part of Europe. Western Europe. When they made that clear with this last election, where Zelensky was elected to get rid of corruption and the powerful pro-Russian oligarchs that were ruling the economy in that country, this is when you saw the massive buildup of Russian forces begin. This is not new. This is not new at all. We saw what was going on in 2014 and 2015. We saw what was going on in 2008. Russia has meddled in the influence and, presence of many of its former USSR bloc state countries. Georgia. Obviously, they annexed Crimea, a southern region touching the Black Sea in Ukraine. And now they're trying to annex even more of eastern Ukraine, inching ever so close to So a lot of people have asked me, Jinx, why is the Ukraine kind of a flashpoint? What is the main purpose? Why now? So, in its nearly 30 years of independence, Ukraine has sought to forge its own path as a sovereign state while looking to align more closely with Western institutions, the United States, the United Kingdom, France, all the other people who are part of NATO, or at least the European Union. So Kiev is honestly kind of balancing its foreign relations to bridge a very deep internal division amongst its own populace. When you look at how the Ukrainian people have voted or spoken over the last 30 years, they're still very divided. They're very torn. I think a large portion of them, based on surveys and interviews with the citizens, have shown that they don't seem to have a problem with joining the European Union and becoming part of the EU. Great. Where you see the most division is where they want to join NATO or not. Well, obviously, the United States is part of NATO. So when you have half, or roughly half, of a population of Russian-speaking Ukrainian citizens who are pushing to become part of NATO, well, I guess you could say that scares Putin and the Russian government. Having a NATO ally that basically borders Russia, is pretty critical. Critical for the people in NATO. And probably a little scary for, the Russian elitist oligarchs that run that country. So we kind of see that this is a powder keg that's been just waiting to go off. Now, has the Ukraine joined NATO? No, it hasn't. At least not yet. And we don't know if they ever will. We have no idea if that's ever going to be a possibility. So, the best thing I could do is kind of show you what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this up, let everyone see. So you can see, obviously it's just a standard picture post. Let's look at the region. So this is the Ukraine. What you're looking at is Ukraine. The southern area, marked off in a red dashed line, this is the contested Crimean area. This is the part that Russia annexed. They took it over. Very strategically placed on the Black Sea. Obvious reasons Russia wanted to take that particular region or annex that particular region of the Ukraine back into Russia. It's still contested to this day. Now, the part to the far east, in your case when you're looking at the screen, would be your right side. That's the current contested area. This is where most of the aggression in the Ukraine is going on right now. Specifically, the two cities marked with the red dashed line. This is where a lot of the attacks and the aggression are going on. Now, the big star up there on the map, that's Kiev. That's the Ukrainian capital. So for the people who don't know, the country directly to the north of Ukraine is Belarus. You got Moldova, which is to the west. And you have Poland, and then so on and so forth as you move closer to Europe. So Russian forces are basically now occupying that light green area. The line shifts, as anyone who's ever served in the military in any kind of battle contingency would understand. That line's going to move constantly. Either Russia is going to push forward and take over more space, or the Ukraine is going to defend itself and push or force the Russian forces back into Russia. So directly to the east, that's Russia. Russia borders the northeast and east side of the Ukraine. That's obviously a problem for the Ukrainian people. So when we look at these things and we try to figure out, okay, so what's really going on? This is what we have to take a look at. These are the things that we have to understand. Now, moving more into the motivation of Putin, we look at this next image here. So this image that you're seeing, These are the NATO countries. These are the countries that are all basically part of NATO. Now, although there are countries here that do border the Russian Empire, if you will, that are part of, well, NATO, it's just one. When you're looking at that big chunk where the Ukraine sits, I know this might be tough for some people to see, so let me do this. I'm going to close the chat window to make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. For those folks on TikTok, I apologize. You can't see this. But if you leave TikTok and unfortunately have to go look at the other one, I understand. So when we're looking at this information, you can see very clearly United States, Canada, all NATO members. That's up here in the corner. You've got Spain, you've got France, Italy, basically the entire Netherlands. Almost all of that are NATO members. Romania, Poland, NATO members. Most of these people, Greece, Turkey, West Germany, Spain, obviously during the Cold War expansion, post-Cold War, Czech Republic, Hungary, Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Slovakia, obviously, Slovenia, Albania, Croatia, even Montenegro, all NATO members. But none of them fully touching Russia. Now what happens if the Ukraine, that big white chunk right next to Russia, or Belarus? What if those two countries jumped on board? Now Russia is almost entirely surrounded by NATO members. So you can see some of the motivations to shock and awe the Ukrainian people, to scare them from joining NATO. But I think there's a little bit more to this that people aren't realizing. A few more pieces that they're just not putting together. And I'm going to break it down like this. I want you, my listeners, to sit down and imagine you're a despotic puppet controlled by a group of elitist oligarchs who've been controlling the money and power in Russia since pre-USSR times. Their names have changed. What they call themselves have probably changed. Bolsheviks, communists, whatever. All the same elitists, all the same power-hungry idiots that have been in control of that part of the world, shit, for the better part of 600 years. Now imagine you're their puppet. You're their public face. And you've been putting your thumb down on the people that you've been in control of, making sure that they're poor and destitute and broke and have no prospects and basically just genuinely miserable all of the time. Well, your little empire breaks apart. You've got some states that separate and you're like, well, we can't have this. But we don't want to piss off the world stage either and get wind of who we really are. So we're going to go ahead and push our pro-Russian pseudo-puppets into their countries and make them those countries' leaders so that they do what we want them to do. Pretty simple, right? I thought so too. So when you look at Poland and Belarus and Georgia and Azerbaijan and Ukraine and the Czech Republic, the Slovakia, Slovenia, all these old Russian bloc states, for the longest time, for the better part of 30 years of their so-called independence, they have been basically run by pro-Russian dissidents, people who only answer to the oligarchical party in charge. Well, when you look at the conditions of the Ukraine and Belarus and Georgia and the Czech Republic, it's also just as equally miserable as Russia was and is. Okay, so the citizens of the Ukraine finally say, you know what, screw this shit, and they start to adopt a more Western ideology. Free economies, market economies, trade, business, innovation, liberty, freedom of the individual, freedom from overtaxation. Things you don't typically see in the Eastern Europe bloc states. Well, Ukraine did that. And then they elected someone, an outsider, a comedian of all people, not a politician, not a business person, a comedian, a level-headed, down-to-earth comedian who enjoyed the idea of being free. This person loved the idea of being free and got elected in a landslide sweeping election. Well, now if I were a despot who answers to some group of elitists who think they know how to lead our lives better than we do, and all these people in the Ukraine, now you got to remember the Ukrainian people share lineage with the Russian people. The most common language spoken in Ukraine is Russian, as is most of the other bloc states. They have family members who live across that border. They talk to each other when they can. So what happens when the people on the Ukrainian side of the border start writing letters to their family members and friends on the Russian side of the border? Says, hey, I've got a job. I've got more money now than our family ever had. I could do this. I own a car. Not a Russian-made state-controlled vehicle. No, I own a car that was built in Spain. And it's pretty. And it comes in a color other than white, black, or green. Well, as a despot, we can't have that. How dare my people find out what freedom actually is? That industry and market economies can solve many of the world's problems. I don't know, like death, starvation, hunger, poverty. We can't have that. So to make sure the people in Russia stay under thumb and are tortured and miserable, but obedient and compliant, we got to stop all this influence from the outside. It's very hard to push Russian state-controlled media on a free market country. Well, what better way to end that bullshit than to march right in there and destroy it? Take it back over, put another pro-Russian leader in place, cut off this whole Western ideology right quick. This is what you are witnessing in real time. Despite the fact the world has overwhelmingly admonished Russia for its actions, the United States told Russia to go fuck off, which I was very surprised that they did. Canada, Spain, Portugal, the United Kingdom, all these other countries. There are countries from Africa who are basically like, no. South Korea is like, what the hell's the matter with you people? India is like, why? Pakistan, even Afghanistan, the Taliban, the fucking Taliban sent a letter to Putin's administration like, you need to find a peaceful resolution to this. This is not called for. None of this is acceptable behavior. I was a little surprised when I heard that one. I was like, really? The Taliban? Okay. It's a start. But despite all of that, Russia is continuing, if not advancing further with their agenda. Because you see, this is what you got to understand, folks. The political elitists who run this world don't give a fuck what you think. They never have, and they never will. They control your money. They control everything. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that we're upset or we're mad. Russia doesn't even care that its own citizens are protesting and rioting in the streets of cities all across Russia because they're angry. They're angry at what their own government is doing in the Ukraine. It's not right. But you know what? They don't care. Russia doesn't care. Putin doesn't care. Putin has no real authority. Putin, like I said, is just a puppet. He's being told what to do by his puppeteers who are the elitist oligarchs that actually run that part of the world and have run that part of the world for the better part of 1,000 years. So how do we fix this? Well, I can see some correlations to what's going on here in the United States. We've got a class of political elitists who all believe that they know better how to live our lives than we do. The evidence is born directly into what we're going to move into next. I'm going to play a video, and this video is very, very upsetting and may be triggering. There's no graphic content, but I definitely think it's something worth noting. And before I play this video, I want you guys to understand, in case you did not hear about this or you did not know, I live in Texas. I love Texas. Texas is a beautiful state with beautiful weather and, for the most part, wonderful people. People from every walk of life, people from every color. A massive indigenous population. Natives who were here long before white people ever got to Texas make up a quarter of this state's population. It is a beautiful melting pot, and it always has been. It was when it was the Republic of Texas, and it was when it was controlled and owned by Spain and Mexico. It is a gorgeous landscape. So when Texas legislation and its governor passed some sweeping anti-transgender bullshit, I was heartbroken to terrified. And then I went from terrified to angry. Because how the hell did it pass in the first place? Well, it's not stopping there. So without further ado, listen to this.
All right, very quickly, I just want to run through the anti-trans bills that are moving this week, and they're moving fast. For reference, today is Monday, February 28th, 2022, and here's what I have for you. Alabama HB 266 and SB 184 will ban care for trans minors and make it a felony to provide care. The same is happening in Idaho. It's listed as Bill H675. In Missouri, HB 2734 and HB 2735 would ban trans youth from sports. In Tennessee, HB 2835 and SB 2696 will amend the Tennessee Code to ban healthcare for trans minors and adults. How can you help? Share, duet this video, tag 3 friends, ask them to join you on this action. We need our cis allies to show up for us now more than ever. Please, please, please call your lawmakers if you live in these states and tell them to vote no. We need to do better.
How scary is that? Seriously, how scary is that? It's not just Texas. Texas was the launching point for many other states, not just the ones she named. Florida is trying to pass the exact same law that Texas did, on top of its Don't Say Gay bill. It's going on in Missouri, Mississippi, Arizona, Virginia, Pennsylvania. All these states have proposed bills or bills that are up for actionable votes as we speak, either making it illegal for transgendered men or women to compete in sports, period, or at the very least forcing transgendered men or women to play in sports of their gender they were assigned at birth. You've got states now passing sweeping legislation banning all transgendered healthcare. And if that's not going far enough as to isolate transgender children from participating in sports or activities, now you have transgendered people who are basically being banned from existing, like Texas. So let me explain to you the correlation between what's going on in Russia and this. We watched Russian oligarchs ignore the world, ignore everyone's wishes, the vast majority of humanity saying, what the hell is the matter with you, Russia? Knock it the fuck off. And they did it anyway because they don't care. That is what an oligarch does. That is what elitism leads to. They are better than you. They don't need to listen to you. Your opinion doesn't matter. Your existence is merely for their pleasure. Well, guess what, folks? It's here in the United States too. Imperialism is alive and well in the U.S. Congress and government, and they are now allowing the sweeping erasure of transgendered people. That's what you're seeing. Russia, just like the title says, is helping murder trans children in the United States. You've got several states, including the U.S. government, passing legislation that nobody's paying attention to. No one even knew was happening. Nobody knew was happening because everyone's focused on what's going on in Ukraine. As they should be, sure. I think it's important to focus on those things. I do. But a lot of these laws, a lot of this legislation is being brought up under the guise of nobody's watching. Nobody's paying attention. Well, here's your chance, folks. This is your opportunity to pay attention. Tennessee, wake up. Florida, wake up. Texas, wake up. Missouri, Mississippi, Alabama, Virginia, Ohio, Idaho, Arizona, Utah, wake up. All this is coming to a backyard near you. Currently, as it stands, the way the law has been written in the state of Texas, if you are a parent and your child comes out as transgender, to a teacher, to a doctor, to a therapist, that teacher, that doctor is obligated under this law to report that to the state child protective services immediately. If they don't, they run the risk of having their license to practice whatever it is they're doing revoked. Teachers will lose their jobs, doctors will lose their medical licenses, therapists will be banned from practicing therapy in that state. Now, I will say this, the vast majority of teachers, therapists, and doctors are probably going to look at this and be like, fuck you. And I hope they do. But I don't want them to lose their livelihoods. I don't want them to go poor. Because, I don't know, they have a moral compass. But what about the ones that don't? What about the ones that go and gladly report your child to CPS? Well, the law states that your child could be taken from you while they investigate, to find out that if you've been promoting them acting in a gender other than they were assigned at birth. And if they find that during their findings, that child will be taken from you and you will go to prison. Now, on top of that, if the doctors, clergy, therapists, whatever, report your child because you, the parent, have been supporting your child's gender identity and allowing them, through medical supervision, of course, responsibly to go through puberty blockers, hormone replacement therapy, or anything of the nature, that is instantaneous. Your child will be taken. All hormone and puberty blocking will stop. Your child will be forced back into the gender that they were assigned at birth under the care of a social worker. You go to jail. Now, my personal favorite little tiny piece of this, which is why I went from obviously concerned to terrified and now angry, is that if I, as a transgender adult, have one of my children that comes out and tells someone they are transgendered. It is not just a doctor or a priest or a therapist. Anybody, any citizen of the state of Texas, hell, even non-citizens of the state of Texas can report me to CPS. This person's child came out as transgendered or has gender confusion because their parent is trans. I don't pass go. I don't collect $200. They come arrest me on the spot. There is no investigation. There's no due process. There's no day in court. It's, you're a fucking pervert. You're abusing your child, and you're going to spend the rest of your life in a cell. Well, folks, all those states that lady mentioned, all the states that I mentioned, they're all trying to pass the same shit. The ACLU has already come out and said they're going to sue the state of Texas, particularly the office of the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, because he's a dick. He's also stupid. That's the dumbest man that's ever graced the face of the earth. And I use the term graced very loosely. But how long until they get this shit repealed? How many children are going to be ripped from their parents' arms? How many trans kids are going to unalive themselves out of terror and fear? That's why the title of my show today is called How Russia is Helping Murder Trans Kids in the United States. So many people are so hyper fixated on what's going on in the Ukraine, they don't see the oligarch elitists taking over this country. I don't give a shit what party you think you belong to or what political affiliation you have. The oligarchs and the elitists are in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. We have a fully controlled Democratic Senate and Congress with president. And there ain't shit being done at all to protect decent human beings. Trans people all over the United States are hiding in terror. We don't want special privileges. We're not asking for special accommodations. We're asking to be left the fuck alone. I don't want to be treated any differently than anybody else. I'm not asking for any additional freedoms, liberties, or rights than anybody else has. I want the right to live. I want the right to live in a manner I see fit. And I want the right to own property. That's it. 3 very basic tenets of human existence anywhere in the world. I have the right to live, and I have the right to do so in a way I see fit, not the way others see fit. I don't have to fall into some constructive social norm as other people feel comfortable, because it is not my job to make you comfortable, just as it's not your job to make me comfortable. It is your job to leave me alone and other trans people alone. If parents out there who love their trans children want to help them and support them and guide them through this path of gender identity, then they should be able to do so without fear of reprisal from state officials or federal ones. Yet here we are. Harkens back to the days of the 1940s and 50s. You know, that greatest generation everyone fucking talks about. Right. You know, where women were confined to a kitchen because that was their rightful place. After women basically ran all American industry, entertainment, sports, banking, finance, accounting, marketing. Pretty much women did everything while the men went off and fought a war. Just for the men to come home and women get thrown out of their jobs, told to shut up and make a sandwich and go back to your kitchen. That's what this feels like. That's what this feels like. We got a little bit of headway. The transgender community, as part of the larger alphabet mafia, as I so lovingly call it, made great strides just to get slapped in the mouth and shoved right back into our closet. I have no words. So I've got a couple of questions that I saw pop up on TikTok. One from a user that asked, do I not have the right to land? Well, actually, in several states, transgendered people don't have the right to buy property or own land. So yeah. Now, thankfully in Texas, they haven't repealed my ability to own land. But I would also point this out to anyone who says and tries to use the land ownership. If you pay property taxes, you don't own that. You don't own it. You don't own the house you live in. You don't own the land it sits on. So don't. Nobody has the right to own land. Only the government has the right to own land. That's an oligarchy. So, are we, the United States, any better than Russia? No, we're not. It's an oligarchy. We're all controlled by elitist oligarchs that sit behind the scenes in the shadows. Someone would call it the swamp. Whatever you want to call it, that's what it is. Everyone gets upset at Biden. Biden's a tool. He's a racist piece of shit. But he's a puppet. He has no real power. He has no real authority. They wouldn't give that man anything. Just like they didn't give Trump anything. Trump had no power. Trump had no authority. He was a puppet being controlled. But that's where we are. We live in a time now that it's like we're going in reverse. Anything we've gained, any control we've ever had, freedoms we think we had, are slowly being eroded away. Well, you can't take all the rights away from everybody all at once, because then people become hyper aware of what you're trying to do. Like in this instance with Russia and the Ukraine. They are now becoming hyper aware that Russia's like, okay, we're not playing anymore. We're just going to come annihilate all of you and put our leaders back in place. Well, here in the United States, it's kind of like the long game. But marginalized people, so people of color, indigenous people, people with low population centers, anyone in the LGBTQIA+, we are a small segment. Military veterans, another marginalized group of people. A group of people who historically have always been shit on. See, it's a lot easier to strip all of your freedoms and individual rights from small groups of people. When we separate and we isolate them out and we categorize them by identities, color, it's so much easier to rip them apart. It's very easy. So what I'm seeing these states doing is they're not going after the LGBTQIA, whatever. They're focusing on one. Let's now subdivide this group a little bit further. Well, nobody likes a tranny. Let's target them first. Once they're gone and we've erased and controlled their existence, let's go after the genderqueer people. How about the pansexuals? How about the polyamorous? Well, then we'll go after bi people. Bi people are greedy. They can't pick one or the other. They want both. We'll easily target and pick them off. And when all that's left of the LGBTQIA+ is the L and the G, What allies do you have left? They're all gone. So then they'll start going after the gays. Then they'll start going after the lesbians. And when that community is destroyed, where do you think their focus will turn then? Maybe indigenous peoples. Finish what they started. Right? Go ahead and wipe them off the planet. And then when everyone's gone, and there's nobody left but the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, the group easiestly manipulated and controlled by those in power. Truthfully, the largest population of sheep to ever exist are wasps. They can get rid of any other dissidents that might exist. That's the reality. Because everyone always says, oh, well, these laws target trans people. That doesn't affect me. Well, those laws target black people. Well, I'm not black. Well, these laws target gay people. Well, I'm not gay. But hey, when all those people are gone, murdered in their beds, basically legislated out of existence, what do you think they're all going to do? And I saw someone mention this is an American problem. It's not. This is a global problem. This happens everywhere. Some places more than others. Well, it's hard to solve global problems globally. I think that's a lesson we really do need to walk away from this episode with. You can't solve global problems globally. You solve global problems locally. You go out in your community. We'll say the suburb you live in, and you let the world know from your suburb, we don't agree. This is bullshit. And then you grow that suburb to your city. And you tell the world, this city does not agree, it's bullshit. And you go from that city to multiple cities, a metropolitan area maybe. And you show the world this metropolitan area is fed up with your bullshit. And you go, and your state changes, and it becomes freer. And you let the world know, this state, this region, is fed up with your bullshit. And maybe one day, multiple states, a whole country might finally change because they're fed up and they want to show the world we're sick of the bullshit. And when you get a whole country becomes a shining beacon of individual freedom and responsibility, where love rules, not money. Well, you know what? The other countries will fall like dominoes. So I want to bring in our co-host, Daphne. For the folks on TikTok, you may not be able to see her. For the folks watching live on all my other platforms, you certainly will. So I'm going to shift off to the side a little bit.
Where are you going?
Oh, you want to come on this side? We come on this side. So everyone, please welcome Daphne.
Hello.
Come on, pull up because they can't hear you over the mic.
I'm working on it.
Welcome.
Thank you.
How's your work day?
So far, so good.
Well, thank you for joining us today. Everyone loves to see Daphne. So for those that don't know, Daphne is not only my co-host, but she's also my wife. So I want to kind of open the conversation up. I'm also going to open up our chat window here, so the people watching on the other side can see the chats. Although we don't have a lot of viewers on our other programs, just in case. So trying to get your opinion on kind of what's going on in the country right now, specifically as more and more states pass these overwhelming and very sweeping anti-trans legislation. How does that make you feel, being married to a transgender woman?
Well, honestly, it's appalling. I'm shocked to see these states taking 20 steps backwards. I thought we were headed in a different direction. So this is just incredibly disappointing to me.
I mean, well, yeah. I would imagine so. Does it elicit fear?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, yes and no, right? Because we can move.
Sure.
It's not like we have to stay here.
And we probably won't.
But at the same time, what stops it from spreading? What stops this trend from spreading to more states?
And that's what we're seeing.
So that's probably the biggest concern. How do we make sure that our voices are heard?
So the one thing, I'm glad you brought that up. I got that question a lot as I was preparing for the stories and the show today, is what can we do? What can the community do? What can our allies do to stop this? And yes, I think that calling your congresspeople, calling your senators, both state and federal, are all very, very good things. I don't think it's going to get you very far. And here's why. Again, you can't solve global problems globally. When you have a state who's getting a little out of bounds with their legislation and their laws, going after your state senators and your state congresspeople, I think, are great. Going over their heads to your U.S. senators and your U.S. congresspeople, sure. Let them know that you're not happy. But the issue with that is, what if they don't care? What if your state representative or your state congressperson or your U.S. senator or your U.S. congressperson are the ones that voted for the anti-trans bill or proposed it? Like here in Texas. Half of the senators and 3/4 of the legislation proposed this bullshit bill. They fully supported it. So you think calling them and saying, I'm not happy with your decision, I'm not going to vote for you in the next round of elections, well, good luck with that. They got your ass until those elections happen. Hey, Mom. My mom says hi to everyone, by the way. And she'll be back here soon. So where do we start? Well, let's look at where the bill focuses. And this is not just for Texas. This is for the states who are trying to pass this shit right now. Why not look at all the agencies that they're expecting? So let's look at CPS. CPS, you have to be licensed to be a social worker. There is a board in every state, an elected board in every state, that hands out those licenses, that authorizes CPS agents to be CPS agents, that authorizes CPS social workers to be social workers and foster guides and all of these things. So why not take your political communities and go after them? Let them know you're not happy with this bullshit. And if they enforce these fucking laws, that you're going to vote them out. And that you're going to vote in people who will actually do what you want them to do. I don't know, like leave the parents of trans children alone.
Well, what about a petition? Because didn't this all start with a petition?
Yes, these things did start with petitions, signature petitions, and yes, we could do that as well. So there are lots of ways to go out there and begin petitioning. You're going to need allies from across your state because this is not a local community problem. This is a state issue. Your state is passing legislation at a state level. So you're going to have to get counties across your state full of signatures to go up there and have it repealed. Legal action. For those people who know the ACLU is going after a lot of these states. Support the ACLU. Call them. Say, what can I do? How can I volunteer? Can I send money? What do you need to go fight this battle? And I think it's a good place to start. Probably a far more effective place to start than calling your congresspeople and your senators. Because rest assured, they're politicians. they don't care. Unless it's a couple weeks before election. Then they'll care. But if you got a few years before they're up for election, they ain't going to do shit. Because, that's how political power works in the United States. Other options, if you are one of those people who are in the marginalized groups, you're transgendered, or you're the parent of trans children, you could flee. Not everyone has that option.
Right.
I consider myself lucky. We consider ourselves lucky that if we needed to, we could pack up, we could sell the ranch and leave. How'd that happen? Getting a phone call. That's how that happened. Oops. So yes, we have the option to just leave. But not everyone has that option. Not everyone has the ability to sell their home or pack up their stuff and just disappear. They feel stuck. That's a very common problem. Well, honestly, amongst the majority of Americans, they're stuck. They're economically pinned where they are. It's very difficult to pack up your whole life and move out of an entire state and go somewhere else. You've got to find work. Got to get that established first. So, yeah. I consider us lucky. Everyone's not going to fall in that category, unfortunately. But it is what it is. So what else can we do? Do you have any suggestions? Ideas?
I mean, those are the only ideas I have, really.
Yeah.
Other than maybe going and talking to, well, again, more of the people who are expected to enforce this shit. Like the physicians and the therapists, and saying, what can you do? Because they actually can. They work for big hospital systems that can lobby the government and get things changed.
That is true. That's a very good idea. So talking to physicians, therapists, doctors, the ones the state is depending on to report these parents as being abusers of their children. So the state of Texas defined putting your child on puberty blockers and hormone replacement therapy as part of gender dysphoria treatment as forced chemical castration.
Wow.
That's how they defined it in their law. Parents are forcing castration on their children. Which is not just ignorant, it is stupid. Because they know better. They absolutely fucking know
Well,
better.
there is fear-mongering.
Of
That's
course
what they're doing.
Fear-mongering. So that's what you'll be charged with as part of, child abuse, child endangerment, chemical castration by force.
Yeah.
And then the doctors themselves can be charged with it if they went along and allowed their patient to go or undergo that kind of thing. And yeah, I think that by going after these physicians and saying, listen, we need you to be an ally. And getting enough physicians from these different facilities, these large hospitals. So like here in Texas, St. David's, Baylor, Scott and White.
Houston Methodist.
Yep, Houston Methodist. There are massive hospital systems right here in Texas where they've got clinics everywhere. Clinics that perform these very things for children en masse. That if we could convince the doctors to be the allies and go after their hospital's administration, well, these hospitals obviously have teams of lawyers and hundreds of lobbyists.
Well, and then there's actually big groups within Texas that a lot of these hospitals already participate in that go and fight things. So they'll fight things for like regulatory requirements.
Sure.
Things like that. And say, hey, this rule that you just put in place doesn't actually make any sense. Can you please revise it?
Right. Exactly. So because they have these established groups, these are things that we as citizens, concerned citizens who are obviously suffering greatly under what these laws mean for us. At any moment, like I said, any citizen in the state of Texas, not doctors, not anyone, because they know I'm trans, can look at one of my kids and that kid could say, I'm a girl or I'm a boy, and maybe they don't present that way. Those people now have the right under this law to report me, and I go straight to jail. No questions asked, no investigations ensued. I just go to jail because my kid wants to wear a dress or my daughter wants to drive trucks. This is not just making transgendered people illegal. This is forcing child abuse.
Right. Yeah, because it is abuse to force your child to present as a gender that they don't believe that they are. That is actual abuse.
That's mental abuse, emotional abuse.
Yeah.
So Texas and these other states, Tennessee, Florida, Alabama, Missouri, Mississippi, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Idaho, Ohio, are essentially, if not already done so, like Texas and Florida, are now attempting to legalize child abuse. That's what they're doing. They're attempting to legalize child abuse. I lived in blissful ignorance as a child because this was not a common subject. My mom can attest to it. This is not something people talked about, nor they really knew anything about. So I was never abused as a child because I acted like a girl. I got picked on. And yeah, that sucked. But CPS wasn't going to show up and arrest my mother because I wanted to walk around with makeup on. No government entity was telling my parents to slap the shit out of me whenever I said, I don't think I'm a boy. But that is exactly what this does. This gives parents terror that if their child says or does anything out of a gender normative definition while they are out in public, that they are going to be arrested, fined, investigated, or have their children taken from them, which is then giving permission for parents to take actions that they otherwise may not would take. Like being overly strict or abusive to their children to prevent them from doing or saying something that might possibly be construed as gender confusion. How many will there be? I don't know. Hopefully none. So if you live in one of the states that I just mentioned, wake up. Wake up. Do something. Lord knows I'm going to do everything. Daphne's going to do everything in our power to make meaningful change here in Texas. But if I fear it's going the wrong way or that they're coming after me, my only other option is to leave. Which is what they want. I know it's letting them win. But I think the smarter battle strategy is to live today so I can fight again tomorrow. Unfortunately, that's the reality that we are currently living in right now. This is 2022.
Yeah, I know.
I wake up and I'm like, did I go back in time? Although when you live in this part of Texas, sometimes it's very easy, like, oh shit, I went back in time. Oh wait, no, there's a modern car, never mind. But sometimes I feel that way. I wake up, it's like, is this the 1920s? It's sad. That's what this is. It's sad. And I don't know where to go from there. I really don't. Other than to move into our next segue. Because we're getting pretty close to the end of the episode, so I want to end on a high note. And that is, we are quickly approaching my 11-month HRT update. So I kind of want to discuss all the changes that I've gone through since I started my hormone replacement therapy, both good and bad, so that other folks who are getting ready or maybe just getting started on their journey kind of get an idea of what to expect. Now, every person's going to be a little bit different. Everyone's a little bit different. But some of the changes I think are pretty universal. And I'll even allow Daphne to kind of jump in and confirm or deny one way or the other. Some of the changes maybe she has seen. So I'm going to say that the biggest changes I've seen thus far have occurred from month 8 to now. There were lots of changes, of course, in the first 3 months. And I've discussed those prior. We got to go over that real quick. My skin got softer in the first 3 months. My face got softer in the first 3 months. Like, I looked a little younger. I was like, ooh. I did not look any more feminine. I looked like a really well-groomed dude. That's basically very well-kept. Possibly like a really, really, really gay guy. Because I had nice manicured eyebrows. I had a pretty soft face. I looked like I never worked a day in my life. That's kind of what I was looking at in the first 3 months. But still very, very much masculine. And it was very dysphoric. Very dysphoric. So for those who are just getting started, understand it takes time. Expect the dysphoria. Be patient. Around month 4, when I really started learning my makeup techniques, I noticed a real deep softening in the face. And when I came home around the 4-month mark, I was like, I'm going to make this decision. I'm going to go have extensions put in because that would help with the dysphoria. My hair was definitely getting longer, but only on the top. The sides and the back were staying very, very short, and that was extremely dysphoric. That was very dysphoric. And obviously your voice is dysphoric. Because even at month 4, I pretty much just sounded like a dude. Like, straight up dude. The next big changes probably to men from month 3 to month 7. My body got very soft. Skin got very thin. I was no longer a human heater. I stopped generating all the heat I used to do, and actually started complaining of being cold. And I was like, well, this is new. My face shape changed. My eyes changed. My cheekbones got higher. Well, not the bones, but the fat filled in really, really nice. My lips got bigger, but not by much. And even noticed a little bit of growth in the chest. Not a lot, though. So, all in all, I'd say that from month 1 through month 8, mild changes, simple changes, but makeup techniques got really good. So, I was happy about that. Yeah. Would you agree? Mm-hmm. So, now going from month 8 to today, where we're approaching the end of month 11, getting very close to my 1-year birthday. Or I'm sorry, my anniversary.
Nice.
It's a nice play on words. As we get approached there, so this is where things have really started to move. So I got hips and a really big ass. It was a little surprising. It wasn't like a gradual, like, oh, look at my butt, look at my butt. It was like, no butt, tight butt, but no butt, no butt, no butt, ass. Kind of all at once. Like, I woke up and I was like, oh, well, that's nice. I have been cheating a little bit, and I've been using a waist trainer, but that combined with just natural progression of the hormones, I do have a little waist. And I was like, well, that's also nice. Breast growth has increased. Obviously, vocal training has allowed me to sound significantly more feminine. Vocal surgery, although I screwed it up, will probably make me sound even more feminine. And that's this Thursday. So tomorrow, my hair has gotten really, really long. So yeah, that's 11 months of growth. From here, a military crew cut, mind you. So everyone's going to start in a different place. Everyone's going to start in a different place. But that's kind of what to expect. My face is definitely feminized. My hands have gotten smaller. My feet have gotten smaller. I've shrank a little bit. Oddly enough, I'm not 6'3". I'm 6'1". I actually had to change my driver's license because I shrank 2 full inches. Now, I don't think that happens for everybody. I don't. But it did for me. So that's kind of my 11-month update. Thought I would share. Be a good idea. And I wanted to share it early. Now, my actual 11-month anniversary is going to be on the 16th. But because I'm getting surgery tomorrow that's going to affect my ability to speak, I don't know if I'm going to be doing any episodes Friday or next Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, depending on how bad I sound. So that's why. What do you think? Care to talk about emotional changes?
Emotional changes?
You would notice them more than I would.
I don't think I notice them any more than you do. Because you notice that you are, well, just more emotional. Like you actually have emotions.
Yes. A lot of them.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're very difficult to control. And for those folks who are on the fence about the understanding of what it's like to be transgendered, particularly male to female transgendered, I was never really sure because I always researched and I looked into what it was like to go through hormones. Obviously scared out of my mind to start because you just never know. But I had read multiple times from other people that, oh yes, as a trans woman, even before you have bottom surgery, and for those that don't know what bottom surgery means, go look it up. I don't know if I want to talk about that here. You get a period. You don't menstruate, but you do get a period. And that's very alarming for someone who never had one to all of a sudden get one. Yes, it is very alarming. Abdomen cramps, gas, which is gross, headaches, blood pressure spikes, blood pressure drops, crying fits, accelerated hair and nail growth, irritability, all seem to spike roughly every 28 to 31 days and last for about 3 or 4 days. Yep. Another fun fact about progesterone, which is one of the medications you will take on hormone replacement therapy if you are feminizing. I was not aware that that's what causes morning sickness. So yeah, if I forget a dose and then take my dose later, I get morning sickness. Horribly, actually. You can, you know. Oh, I snorted on camera. Damn it. So yeah, expect it. And it takes a while to build up in your system. Progesterone, although is a powerful hormone, it isn't magic. It takes work and it takes time. So I want to say around 7 or 8 months is really when the whole, you can feel the period I'm sure it was there. Once you get your hormone regimen down, you're not forgetting your doses, you're not skipping them on accident. When you get your rhythm down, the period is there, you just don't feel it. This is my co-host and my wife, Daphne. So they can't see you on TikTok.
Hi.
There she is.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was very weird. So I'm going to leave the last few minutes of our episode today for just open Q&A. So, Living Well with Michael, hello. Thank you for joining us. That's right. Hello. Peaches, hello. You've got some legislative work up there, Peaches. Pennsylvania's trying to pass the same bullshit Texas has. Hey, Rebecca. Greetings. So we are taking questions both on our stream live, which is Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok. I don't think I can answer questions from Twitter. Maybe you can. So as you can see on the other live stream, the questions will appear. TikTok, obviously you can see your own questions. So yes, you are on the Discord. That's right. I think I saw you pop in. Thank you, Living Well. Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you, Karen. Thank you very much. So we'll give this opportunity for those people who are curious, have questions. Obviously, please try to keep your questions appropriate. You are live. There are lots of people who can see you. So I don't care so much about the swearing. Just be polite. I don't think that it matters at all, Peaches, if your child is trans. I think that's beautiful. I think that's wonderful. It gives you as the parent an opportunity to grow with your child. I mean, you're kind of studying some of that stuff now. I mean, what do you think as far as it goes, parents' relationship with a transgender child?
I'm actually not studying anything about that right now.
Okay, you haven't gone into any of that?
No, not
my
really.
bad.
Well, the only thing that I have learned is that children do know their identity by about 3 or 4. And if your child is telling you, telling you, oh, I think I'm a girl, you need to listen. Like, they're not just
Playing.
Like, if they say it over and over again, they're giving you resistance to wearing the clothes that you've bought them. Maybe they want to wear the other gender's clothes. Like, these are all signs that your child is transgender.
Not necessarily solidified, but
Yeah, like
definitely a sign.
They're figuring it out.
So yeah, I mean, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I like that. I can't remember that far back. I can't. The farthest that I can remember going back, like clearly remember, and that's only because I've been able to talk to a therapist and really dive deep and try to sit down and remember these things, is about 8. I was 8 years old. That was my first transgender memory. And I probably had many more before that. I just can't remember them now. I'm over 40 years old. So memory's not as good as it used to be. Got a couple of knocks to the head while I was in the military, so probably jostled a few of them loose.
I don't really understand when people say they can remember things from when they were 3 or 4. I'm like, how?
I know I can't.
I can't.
My mom probably could remember tons of stuff I did when I was 3 and 4 and 5.
Well, yeah.
Because she was outside looking in. So, but yeah, I think it's interesting to bring up that children kind of understand their identity,
Yeah.
gender-wise, by 3. No, Peaches, the government should have no right or any say whatsoever about who anybody is. But that's kind of where we are today. Aw, Becca, that's great. I'm sure your nephew is much happier now. I know a lot of... There you go. So for those that can't see my mother's comment, I did not like to get dirty at all. That comes as no surprise. No surprise. I'm still that way. I'm very fastidious. I think it's interesting. It's interesting where we are right now. Scary. But maybe this will be a good turning point. Maybe this will wake people up. I know the biggest thing that people have a hiccup over right now is not so much the male to female presenting, as in they'll pass at some point. My goal is to pass. Absolutely. My goal is to pass. But that's not a point of transgenderism. The goal is not to pass. The goal is to be yourself. So we got a question from Suzanne Hart. How did you tell your wife, or did she suspect anything beforehand? Well, the good news is she's sitting right here. So.
Well, as far as suspect anything, no. The most I suspected was that maybe you were gay. I didn't suspect transgender, though.
Yeah.
So.
I hid this very, very well. For a very long time. Well, that's the point of the mask. Well, thank you, Mike. That's very nice of you to say. I think I came out to you conversationally over the phone, but not so much like, oh, surprise, I'm trans. It was more, I really need to get help. And I'm going to go talk to somebody about this. But I think, and I'm pretty sure that's exactly how I came out. It's like, I think I might be transgender. Yeah. I knew. But I wanted to get confirmation from a medical professional. When that was confirmed, the second conversation I had with my wife about this, I would like to start hormone replacement therapy. This is what it will entail, and this is what it will cost. And you were very supportive.
Yeah.
And I told her the same thing the doctor told me. I've got 4 to 6 months that I could be on HRT before its effects would be difficult to reverse. So that's what I told you. If I feel like this is not it, or I change my mind, whatever the case, whatever extenuating circumstances there were, the doctors gave me an out. And yeah, I started hormones. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you for the good question. That was a very good question. Oh, thank you, Suzanne. Did you see what she said?
Yeah.
Okay. Because that's really tiny, so I wasn't sure if you can see it.
I can see it. I've got glasses on.
I can't see it. I got
No, I can't read without my glasses. So.
But thank you. That's very sweet. So for those who are watching on here that can't see Suzanne's comment because it's not showing up on the little chat reel, she said, I think y'all both are great for still being together and honest. This takes work. I know Daphne will agree.
Yep.
I know she'll agree. This takes work. The divorce and relationship failure rate for those who come out as transgendered during a relationship is about 70%. 70%. That's tough. So we are part of, so far, and pray to everything that exists, it stays that way. We are part of the very small 30% minority that work. But it takes work. Openness, honestness, discussions, and sometimes therapy. Marital counseling is a great asset and tool. I recommend it for everybody. Thank you, Peaches. So Peaches stated that she absolutely loves my family and how supportive my wife has been. You are awesome.
Thanks.
But everyone already knows that. There you go. My mom actually posted, this journey will have ups and downs. Absolutely. Don't give up. Be you. And it makes her very happy to see how happy I am. Aw, thank you for the butterflies. I love when people do that. They're so pretty. Well, that's cool, Mike. That's very cool. I'm glad she's working with you. I really am. Absolutely, having a supportive family is critical, but it is not necessary to live your authentic life. So many of my transgender brothers, sisters, and non-binary siblings take their own lives because they don't have family supporting them, and they feel like they're an island. If you are one of those watching this right now, where you feel like you have nobody else, that you are an island, you are not. I am here. Daphne is here. You are welcome to reach out to us 24/7 on our website. It has a chat feature. There is a phone number that if you call and you leave a voicemail, I will call you back. I will call you back. You have somebody who understands. For those who are on the fence about transitioning because they're afraid, you have every right to be afraid. I was afraid. Your fear is valid. But don't let that stop you. I am living proof it is never too late. I did not start my transition until after 40. It is never, ever too late. You can transition anytime and be happy. And know that there are support structures out there for you. So that pretty much takes us right up to the hour and a half mark. I'm going to go ahead and end our episode for today and say thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you for everyone on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and then obviously TikTok as well. You're all wonderful. And hopefully I'll get to see you in our next episode after my voice heals a little bit. But until then, take it easy.